Here are a few things you should know. On us transactions, same bank's ATM, customers withdrawing from their own bank's ATM will continue to enjoy free withdrawal. Not on us transactions, other banks' ATMs, on-site ATMs within bank premises, a fee of 100 per 20,000 withdrawal will apply. 100 naira per 20,000 withdrawal will apply. Off-site ATMs outside bank premises, a fee of 100 naira per 20,000 withdrawal plus an additional surcharge of up to 500 naira will be charged. What are the implications of this on the pocket of an average Nigerian? Joining us to break this down is Kalu. Welcome to you, sir, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, when you did this circular, this new policy by the Central Bank of Nigeria, did it come to you as a surprise? What's your reaction, your initial reaction when you saw this?
Yeah, the surprise is that the ATMs don't work generally. If you go to the ATMs in Nigeria, you don't see cash in the ATM. So to increase the costs to take out cash from machines that don't work is a bit strange, you know. I would have hoped that the CBN would have enforced all ATMs working and then perhaps introduce, because of inflation or energy costs, we want to maybe allow the bank to recoup some costs back by charging more on the ATM. So you look at the cart before the horse. But overall, it's just more cost to the Nigerian household and to your budget. You're going to have to pay more to get out cash and all that. So then you don't use cash. Maybe that's where the CBN is going to discontinue or to discourage use of cash in the economy. Perhaps that's their real goal.
But are we really ready for the digital economy that has been preached for the longest time? Just before you joined the conversation, NLC is threatening to go on strike if we don't revert to the tariffs that were used by the internet service providers. So are we really ready for this cashless economy that the CBN has been pushing for?
Yeah, we tried it before. I mean, we found out we weren't ready. You know, the system sort of crashed. Transfers couldn't keep up. Internet couldn't keep up. So, you know, we have a long way to go towards this full non-cash banking. Nigeria is a very, very cash economy, especially when you leave, say, the cities of, say, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja. You go outside the cities, there's a lot of cash being used. So we're not ready yet. And again, the point is, if you go to the banks, most of the ATMs do not have cash. You have to go to the POS operators to get cash. So I think that should be the focus of the CBN, first of all, to say, let's even make the ATMs, let's make the banking sector work. Let's folks be able to go into the banks and get cash. If that is occurring, then you can talk about increasing the cost. So right now, it looks like they are basically saying, you're not going to get that service, and when you do get that service, we're going to charge you more. Doesn't really look like a sound plan on the face of it. Yeah.
Now, Kalu, oftentimes in recent past, the Central Bank of Nigeria has issued circulars to commercial banks that they should comply with its directive to stock their ATMs with cash. And we've also seen the proliferation of POS services. You mentioned earlier in your submission that we're sort of putting the cart before the horse. Now, if you were the CBN and you could advise them, what measures would they need to take? Because it's the global best practices. If you go to South Korea, you will hardly see cash and other developing economies. What do they need to do to fully achieve a cashless society and make transactions more seamless? And also for those who need cash, to make it readily available?
You know, a long time ago, if you recall, we used to have bank ATMs outside the bank. So if you went to a restaurant or you went to the airport, you would have seen bank ATMs at those locations and you could get your cash and all that. The CBN reversed that policy a long time ago. So now you have unauthorized guys called POS operators. So in Nigeria, we look at them as job creation opportunities where we have lots of youths under an umbrella with cash. You know, you don't see it in any economy apart from Nigeria. You know, it's a bit, I don't think we should have POS in the number scale that we have in Nigeria. And there's a direct correlation between cash in POS machines and cash in ATM machines. One would always win. If you've got cash in POS machines, I assure you, you're not going to have cash in the ATM machine. So Nigeria's going to sit back and say, if we want to pursue a $1 trillion economy, if we're going to be the largest economy, not just in terms of size, but sophistication and scope, do we need to have citizens going to take cash, buy and sell Naira cash under an umbrella, the name of financial inclusion? I don't think it makes sense. I think we have to go back to to traditional banking. Let the banks be allowed to have ATMs outside the banks, then stock them. Then you can then, hold the banks accountable to ensure those machines are fully stocked. Right now, it's just not working. The banks just don't have the means or the distribution networks to get this cash out. And, there's no cash. So someone has to be held responsible for that. And which will reduce the scope and size of the POS rollout that we see in Nigeria.
I'd like you to speak a little, to the POS that you've just mentioned. This point of service operators, like you said, some would argue that a number of them have been given jobs. Unfortunately, we saw the exploitation that Nigerians had to experience at the hands of POS operators when we had the Naira redesign program, and it seemed that a lot of them bought land from that during that period. But right now, the argument would be that if this happens, either the POS operators will find a way to stock up on cash, and we will be the ones to feel the impact from the POS operators. Or some would say, if this might kick them out of business, and then financial exclusion is still a challenge in Nigeria. So how do we find that balance?
Well, we've got to maybe do a bit of smarter regulation. The point I make is this: if you go to any country on earth, you cannot find banks without cash at ATMs and guys under umbrellas with cash. It just doesn't work. I get the unemployment angle. Lots of youths have those jobs now. Lots of the government advertises those jobs. Hey, we've created POS jobs. But it's just not sustainable for security, for operations, to have people selling and buying cash. You can have folks that say, my job is to change money at weddings so you can spray. That's not a job. I know people are employed there, but that's not really a job. So we've got to maybe be smarter and say, okay, what can POS operators do? Can they maybe do payment systems where it's not that they're selling cash, but they're allowing financial inclusion by offering you spreading out those terminals to small, medium-scale enterprises, very, very nano, small enterprises. But we just can't have that going on. It's very convenient. It's like Okada. Okada is very, very convenient, right? But you need to have a transportation network built on Okada. You're going to get an Okada from, say, Ikeja to CMS as a means of transportation. Nobody would say that it creates jobs, but no one's going to argue for that. So it's the same thing. POS is like an Okada system in the Nigerian financial system. We really shouldn't have it, but we have it because of the inefficiencies. So let's slowly take it away and make the banks and the non-bank guys basically work. We have eNaira. It's supposed to work without a bank account with your NIN operated phones. That should be the model. Let the phones that every Nigerian carries be its own POS. So that way you reduce the need of going to a central POS to get cash. Let the phones NIN with eNaira or whatever currency work. Then that way you reduce that need for cash.
Now, Nigerians would like to know, because in the last 1 year or 2 years, they've been increase in tariffs, the removal of fuel subsidy, quite a lot. And it seems every other week there's a new policy to take money from people that are already struggling. What could be the rationale behind the central bank's charges? Is it that the banks use this extra money for maintaining their operations? Because Nigerians find it that they're struggling to understand the rationale behind it. And why is the central bank not protecting ordinary Nigerians and consumers like it should?
Yeah, I mean, the grapevine is not official. Just the grapevine says that the banks have argued that it's not the cost of maintaining the ATMs is high. So this is to make the banks recoup this operational cost to maintain stock and provide power to the ATMs. That's what I understand this policy is for. So to allow the bank to recoup the profit for maintaining ATMs, so that way they can then make sure these ATMs have cash. That's what I've heard. But the banks do make tons of money. And it's also in the bank's interest to have ATMs fully stocked with cash. So I think the best way to make the banks recover their money is to allow the banks to scale. Even if I have one branch, if I want to have 10,000 ATMs spread across Nigeria, I should be allowed to do so at the marketplace, at the malls, even with my one branch. So that way I'm recouping my cost from scaling my ATM operation, not just from charging each individual transaction a fee. So that's going to be another way we can do it. So that way that overall the bank costs come down because they have 10,000 ATMs, then charging or increasing the cost per withdrawal to the average Nigerian. There are many ways to skin a cat. The idea is to make the banks have cost-effective tariffs and, of course, not to increase the cost on the average Nigerian. So we're going to be a bit more creative in thinking about this because it's more costs in an economy that's also under stagflation. So that's going to be less consumption by the households if all these tariffs and policies keep on happening.
Now, Mr. Kalu, just before we let you go, we've seen a rise in proliferation of digital banks, online banks that seem to be a disruption to traditional banking. Is it a good thing for our economy?
Yeah, if it really disrupts the banking economy and provides competition and choice, it's a very, very good thing. For now, the loans, which is the main place where we need to disrupt the banks from, only banks in Nigeria seem to give loans. But if you look at the data, less than 5% of Nigerians have gotten a loan from a commercial bank. So we need to have more non-banking institutions offering loans. I mean, small loans, the small daily loans that market women use. That's what we need to really go out and disrupt so that we can get credit at the lower strata of the economy, and that can jumpstart consumption and trade at that very, very low strata. The banks can focus on working capital to the multinationals, to the bigger corporations, but at that very, very base pyramid level, where those guys do not have access to traditional finance, we should allow the fintech guys to go there and offer loans, not double-digit loans, but those single-digit daily loans that most guys or traders need to get cash, sell, and then to do repayment. That's where we need the disruption. We need that increased competition at that base pyramid level. And then, of course, that allows the economy, the banks, and the non-fintech guys basically then compete, and then costs ultimately come down.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this story. However, my final question will be a slight deviation to a conversation that we had just before you joined, especially because now it feels like we're seeing increase in different areas, electricity tariff hike, telecoms tariff hike. Now, the NLC has threatened to go on a strike. They've asked Nigerians to boycott the use of certain telecom services from 11 a.m. to sometime during the day, and saying that if by the end of February they do not revert to what the previous rate was, that they'll be going on a total shutdown. So let's get your thoughts on the telecoms tariff hike and the NLC's position.
Well, that's not a serious position. You're not going to tell anyone to restrict use of telecom. Like you told the guest before, folks do Zoom, folks use their phone calls now at their bank. Folks, how are they going to stop using telecoms? The telecom guys are increasing costs because they've not been allowed to increase costs for years now. So diesel price has gone up. They maintain base stations. They haven't been allowed to increase the cost of phone calls to match the cost of providing those calls to Nigerians. It's not really a profit grab. It's just a grab. It's just maybe a cost increase to recover costs that they have already spent to provide those services to Nigerians. So if you boycott them and they go away, who's going to replace them? There's no NITEL again, right? So we're going to be a bit more careful. NLC needs to be a bit more strategic in what fights they take on. Why are they only focused on GSM operators? I think it's, and they don't have, but the strategy just seems a bit off to me. Boycott GSM calls. They create the jobs, they create the revenues, they create the productivity in the economy. If you boycott them, what happens? If your sister calls you, you don't pick up, or you don't attend your Zoom, or how does that mean? So he won't take a call himself speaking. So that's not a serious proposal from NLC. A bit disappointing from them. You should get more serious in how they want to address the issues of the real cost increase in their economy that's causing the MTNs and the Airtels to also hike their costs. Focus on the problem. Don't grandstand.
Quite frankly, that I was struggling as well to see how the shutdown will work, because I mean, if they start the shutdown, how are you going to join us via Zoom to be a part of this interview?
How am I supposed to wish my wife happy Valentine's Day tomorrow?
Kalu, thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Take care.
You as well.